So, speaking of oligarchs, people who need to be taxed out of existence, let's get to the gulag, which we still haven't changed yet.
Oh wait, this is the right one.
Oh, did you hear?
Sentenced to the motherfucking gulag.
Oh, all right, yeah, let's do it. I'm with it.
Motherfucking gulag.
William Lee, the ever talented William Lee.
Motherfucking gulag. Sentenced to the motherfucking gulag. Motherfucking gulag.
I love it. I love it. Like, you never thought that the gulag would be so soulful.
Motherfucking gulag.
Get
Like
the
fuck out of here. Massive
Get
asshole.
the fuck out of here.
Massive asshole.
Did he slow me down, or do I actually
Massive
speak that slowly?
asshole. Sentenced to the motherfucking gulag. Massive asshole. Massive asshole. Massive asshole. Sentenced to the motherfucking gulag. Get the fuck out of here. Motherfucking gulag. Motherfucking gulag. Motherfucking
William Lee. We've got, what a talented audience. Okay. The whole enterprise of fact checking is basically ridiculous because it's a context-free exercise in pedantry and point scoring mostly. And of course, let's enlarge it. Empirical objective realities matter. Like, actual numbers matter. Actual science matters. But facts in and of themselves don't mean a thing, and they won't liberate you. So even facts that we need on our side, and facts about poverty or inequality that tell the story of our society, you still need to fit an analysis around them, or they mean nothing. So the fact check industry is at best an incredibly limited exercise, and it's one that's subjected to PR and all sorts of manipulation, as well as the lazy establishmentarian nonsense ideology of those who practice it. Witness Jake Tapper trying to own Bernie Sanders in a truly pathetic display here.
Hey everybody, it's Jake Tapper from CNN State of the Union and factcheck.org, and this week we're going to take a look at a claim made by two self-identified Democratic socialists, Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders and New York congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They say that a study funded by the billionaire Koch brothers, who are generally, I think it's fair to say, libertarians and conservatives, that the Medicare-For-All proposal would actually save the government money.
Let me thank the Koch brothers, of all people, for sponsoring a study that shows that Medicare-For-All would save the American people $2 trillion over a 10-year period.
It shows that Medicare-For-All is actually much cheaper than the current system that we pay right now.
Is that true? Did a study funded by the Koch brothers indicate that Medicare-For-All would actually save the U.S. government trillions of dollars? No.
Okay, so you might be thinking to yourself, oh shit, single payer, which is obviously a moral necessity, maybe they flubbed up the numbers there. But you'll notice that Jake Tapper just did an incredible move there, which is that he said, save the American people money, which
is what Bernie said.
Which is what Bernie and Ocasio said, and what the Mercatus study demonstrates conclusively. He then flipped it to American government, which I guess is an interesting flip, by the way, for a guy who says in one breath that the Kochs could be described as libertarians, to then a couple of seconds later to conflate the U.S. government and American citizens in a way that we don't as socialists. I had no idea that there was literally no daylight between the spending of the federal bureaucracy and individual consumers. As Matt Brunick says in the Jackman Tapper's Fact Check, he shows a video of Bernie Sanders saying, let me thank the Koch brothers of all people for sponsoring a study that shows that Medicare-For-All would save the American people $2 trillion over a 10-year period. This claim made by Sanders is 100% correct. There's no errors in it, and it's not deceptive in any way. How does Tapper find an error in his statement that's entirely true? By pretending that Bernie Sanders said something other than what he said. Specifically, Tapper describes Sanders' claims as such. Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez say that the study that funded by the billionaire Koch brothers shows that Medicare-For-All proposal would actually save the government money. Tapper then goes on to debunk the claim, and so on. Tapper's fact-checking was so egregiously wrong that even people who were previously uninterested in challenging shouty fact-checking piped in and told him he was wrong on Twitter and elsewhere. Tapper rejected these criticisms on Sunday but as of Sunday afternoon, conceded that the video is wrong and promised that it will be corrected soon. There were actually more errors in the video that Bruning goes over, but this is a great example of that any actual left social democratic governance is going to be opposed by the technocratic center and by lazy false equivalency journalists. And also that their blind spots, their ideological hardwiring is so intense. And they're also so, see, we have the ability to say, we know exactly where we're coming from politically. And now here are the empirical pieces of evidence that are marshaled for our fundamentally normative and ethical arguments. That's how politics actually works. They think they're doing science, but they're doing politics. And in the service of that delusion is always an anti-left, anti-human bias for things we need urgently, like Medicare-For-All, down to the point of literally changing the wording to make a absolutely factually correct claim by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez look like a falsehood, which is why Jake Tapper is going to need to do a little bit of journalistic retraining in the gulag.
This whole fact-checking trend that we've seen like really explode over the past few years has been very worrying for me. I mean, if you look at the kind of folks oftentimes who are tasked with it, I mean, these are people who think that they're neutral. And that's when ideology, honestly, is at its strongest, is when you think that you're post-ideological or you're beyond ideology. I mean, I know just like a lot of, modern, economists, because that's a field that is like ridiculously, people are just so in love with these beautiful models and mathematics. You have models that don't include debt as like a function, as a part of the economy, or don't deal with money as something that's a political category in itself. I mean, if we look at the history of the U.S. and Western Europe and the role that the central banks, the Federal Reserve and central banks had in creating conditions that led to recession purposefully, right? And you want to talk about these as being kind of like neutral institutions, you're fucking full of shit. And like 100%. That, and that's the absolute, that's really the problem with all these fact checkers. I know immediately, I know Trump really bothered a lot of people because he would just go on and say whatever he wanted. But this opposite desire to kind of have somebody come in and explain the world for you so neatly is something to be very worried about. I mean, I remember there was a show in DC, an art show that was supposed to be purposefully fact checked. So every piece of art was a completely fact-checked piece of art. Oh my God,
people are fucking insane.
And it's like, this is a very, because, I mean, who loves that? The state? Like, who loves that? The people who are in power? Because if we're clamoring for the world to be explained to us very clearly, there are plenty of people who are primed and in the position to make the world seem very, very clear to you.
That's right.
In 2011, I spent the summer in London interning at an organization called fullfact.org. Which has since basically developed into one of the main fact-checking. I remember we took the day off when we crossed like 500 Twitter followers. Now it's like 40,000 or something like that. And one thing I learned over the course of that job is that, you don't have the subject matter expertise to do this. So you're really confined to your desk, basically.
Yep.
You can look to see what's online and available at your fingertips through those sorts of databases. Or the best thing you could have done then is appeal to your member of parliament, and they can submit a question to the government, and the government can put its researchers on it. None of those are very foolproof ways to get it. Although I think they're actually, it's sort of like FOIA, but you can just ask them questions and they can give you an estimate. No, that is good, but. Yeah, you do not have a lot of good information, and often it's competing information from different interested groups that you're focused on balancing on.
Well, that's what's also another thing in the Tapper segment is that most of his debunk relies on a press release from the Mercatus Center, because obviously the researchers are embarrassed that their own oligarch-funded study said that Medicare-For-All would be the most cost-effective for American consumers. They're scrambling to undermine their own research, and Tapper essentially builds his debunk on their press release, which,
not even based on his interpretation of their original study.
Exactly.
Which is, I mean, it's a big mark against Tapper's credibility, but it's also not just Tapper, because Tapper, when he copped to it on Twitter, went on to list like 6 different publications that did the exact same bullshit fact check based on the Mercatus study.
Right.
And those ones were in print, so it
Washington
didn't get the
Post
attention.
was
Yeah.
one.
And
Right.
the entire system is completely broken when that can happen.
Absolutely. And the ideological assumption behind it is delusional. Right? Like the idea that you can just look at anything other than actually, in fact, something like a raw data point, like the original piece of data. Like it saves
You have
this
to go to
amount
their
of money.
interpretation of it, which is
Right.
amazing.
Amazing.
Well, look at the discrepancy in that one. We were talking about the American people versus the American government, right?
Right.
And they're literally trying to try to make this tension in between those two words that would, if they were to put that, like if it was like PolitiFact, you know, they would have that big red thing is like lie, you know, pants on fire, something like that on, you know, such a small kind of technicality. And you can see how these can be played with. I mean, like, you know, we talk about, you know, you talk about like a state like Israel, right? And then you start to get into like some very funny, you say, oh, you know, Gaza is an open air prison. Think about the fact checkers on that one. Oh, really?
Well, no, actually, it's not technically deemed a prison.
Are you saying all Israelis are prison guards?
Yeah, because if they're not, then actually that's an inaccurate statement.
It doesn't. Yeah, I mean, look, and there is this notion, and I understand, obviously, in the face of just like pure lying and reality creation, but the reality that people are concerned about preserving certain empirical realities, but empirical realities are always in context, and you're going to have to actually fight the lies with rigor, not just random disembodied facts.
And it's also always not the solution that more context is better. The context that Tapper says that Bernie is misleadingly leaving out is that the Mercatus study didn't want to say what they actually said, and now they want to clarify that actually we didn't mean that, we take it back, and if we would have known that that's what we were saying, we would have been careful not to have said it.
Precisely. Is this that fake news that you're always talking about? President Cheeto, the traitor and chief.
But there's nowhere for them to hide either.
That was the best part of 2016, though. It's like when this like you know, because there's always been fact checking, but when they like really everyone just got like a big boner for fact checking.
Yeah,
was with Trump, right? And they would be like, you know, we're gonna show and we're gonna tweet at Trump and all of our Trump supporting uncles.
Oh yeah,
that you know,
that's really gonna the same people who are like, Obama's part of a secret Maoist plot to make my daughter a transgender Muslim are the same people that are going to be like, well, according to PolitiFact, actually the claim that Mexicans are part of an secret alien death ray division by the United Nations.
Unconfirmed.
Apparently it's unconfirmed. So I'm going to have to reevaluate my entire view of that whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so apolitical. It's honestly, and I hate to go there, but it's such a kind of like view of that a lot of liberals have, where it's just like if you just sit down two different ideas, and if you just have these ideas, you know, debate point by point, like it's some kind of, you know, speech from the West Wing, that there's going to be a, you know, a kind of conclusion.
Please, speech from the West Wing, Jesus Christ!
It's not logic, it's power.
It's not logic, it's power. That's always the truth.